Rebuilding a Legacy, Iron Man's Return with a Dark Secret. Chapter 4, The First Clues. Iron Man and Elijah had been waiting for days to hear back from Dr. Jane Foster. Finally, Elijah received an email from her, suggesting they meet at a small cafe in a secluded part of the city. Iron Man and Elijah agreed to the meeting and headed out. The cafe was quiet, with only a few customers scattered about. Iron Man scanned the room, looking for any signs of danger. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Elijah noticed Iron Man's unease and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's going to be okay," Elijah said. Iron Man nodded, trying to push his paranoia aside. They found a table in the back of the cafe and waited for Dr. Foster to arrive. As they waited, Iron Man's mind raced with questions. What did Dr. Foster know about him? Could she help him remember his past? And most importantly, who was after him? Suddenly, the cafe door opened, and a woman walked in. She was tall and slender, with long brown hair and glasses perched on her nose. Iron Man recognized her from the file Elijah had shown him. "Dr. Foster?" Elijah stood up and offered her a handshake. "Please, call me Jane," she said, smiling. They all sat down at the table, and Elijah got straight to the point. "We're here because we need your help. Iron Man has no memory of his past, and we think someone is after him." Jane's expression turned serious. "I see. And what do you want from me?" "We were hoping you could tell us more about Iron Man's past. Maybe there's something you know that could help us figure out who is after him," Elijah said. Jane hesitated for a moment, as if considering what to say. "I did work with Iron Man on a few projects, but I'm not sure how much help I can be. It's been years since we've spoken." Iron Man leaned forward. "Please, Jane. Anything you can remember could be helpful." Jane took a deep breath. "Well, there was one project we worked on that was different from the others. It was highly classified, and only a few people knew about it." "What was it?" Iron Man asked eagerly. Jane hesitated again. "I can't say too much about it, but I can tell you that it had to do with advanced technology. And it wasn't just theoretical. We were actually working on a prototype." Iron Man felt a jolt of excitement. This was the first real lead they had gotten. "Do you know where the prototype is now?" Jane shook her head. "No. After the project was shut down, everything was confiscated by the government. I don't know what happened to it after that." Iron Man's excitement turned to frustration. "So, what now? We're back to square one?" Elijah spoke up. "Not necessarily. We have a lead now. We just need to follow it." Iron Man nodded, feeling a renewed sense of hope. "What's the next step?" Elijah pulled out his laptop and started typing. "I'll do some digging, see if I can find out anything about this project. In the meantime, we need to stay vigilant. If someone is after Iron Man, they're not going to give up that easily." Iron Man knew Elijah was right. They were still in danger, but at least now they had something to work with. As they left the cafe, Iron Man couldn't help but wonder what other secrets his past held. What had he been working on that was so important? And why did someone want him dead? As they walked down the empty street, Iron Man felt Finally, Elijah's phone rang. Iron Man and Elijah looked at each other, both feeling a sense of relief and apprehension. Elijah answered the call and listened intently, nodding his head occasionally. When he hung up, he turned to Iron Man. "Dr. Foster is willing to meet with us," he said. "She's agreed to meet us at a coffee shop downtown in 2 days." Iron Man nodded, feeling a sense of urgency. "We need to be prepared for anything." Elijah agreed. "I'll make sure we have backup. And I'll do some more research on her before we meet." The next 2 days were spent in preparation. Elijah made several phone calls and sent emails, gathering information and making arrangements. Iron Man spent most of his time trying to remember more about his past, but the memories were still elusive. On the day of the meeting, Iron Man and Elijah arrived at the coffee shop early. They scoped out the area, looking for any signs of trouble. But everything seemed normal. They took a seat at a table near the back of the shop, waiting nervously for Dr. Foster to arrive. When she finally walked in, Iron Man felt a jolt of recognition. He couldn't remember much about her, but he knew that he had worked with her before. Dr. Foster walked over to their table and took a seat. "I'm sorry to hear about your memory loss," she said. "It must be difficult." Iron Man nodded. "It is. But we're hoping that you can help us." Dr. Foster looked at Elijah. "What do you want to know?" Elijah pulled out a file and handed it to her. "We're trying to find out who is after Iron Man. We think that there might be something in his past that could help us." Dr. Foster opened the file and started reading. "I see. Well, I can tell you that Iron Man was working on a project for S.H.I.E.L.D. before his memory loss." Iron Man felt a sense of shock. S.H.I.E.L.D.? That sounded familiar. "What kind of project?" Elijah asked. Dr. Foster hesitated for a moment before answering. "It was a top-secret project. I can't tell you much more than that. But I can tell you that it involved a new kind of technology." Iron Man felt a flicker of memory at the mention of technology. He couldn't remember anything specific, but he knew that he had been involved in some kind of advanced research. "Do you know who else was involved in the project?" Elijah asked. Dr. Foster shook her head. "I'm sorry. The project was highly classified. Only a few people had access to the information." Iron Man felt a sense of frustration. It seemed like every lead they followed just led to more questions. "Is there anything else you can tell us?" Elijah asked. Dr. Foster thought for a moment. "There is one thing. While Iron Man was working on the project, there was a security breach. Someone tried to steal the technology." Iron Man felt a sense of unease. "A security breach? That didn't sound good. Do you know who was behind the breach?" Elijah asked. Dr. Foster shook her head. "No. But I do remember that Iron Man was the one who stopped them. He saved the project." Iron Man felt a sense of pride at the mention of his heroic actions, but at the same time, he couldn't help but wonder who had tried to steal the technology. As they wrapped up the meeting, Elijah thanked Dr. Foster for her time. Iron Man walked her to her car, feeling a sense of gratitude. "Thank you for your help," he said. If you're enjoying this series, make sure to subscribe, and turn on notifications, so that you don't miss any of the action in Chapter 5.